Welcome back to Access Academy. Today we return to our webinar series called Duxbury Braille Translator from First Paddle to Flocking Flying. You might notice the duck-related theme in the webinar graphic designed to promote today's event. And today we are going to be featuring Getting Good at Editing. So building on what we've covered in earlier Duxbury webinars, our goal is to strengthen your understanding of the working parts of Duxbury Braille Translator so that you can troubleshoot almost any file. Leading the charge of helping you answer questions like, why is this file not working the way that I need? Why are there some ways that I can get math to work? What can I do to get it to work? Well, we have back with us APH's very own Kyle DeJute.
Thank you, Amy. I am happy to be here paddling and starting to fly with our third in this series of 4 webinars. Our title is, again, Getting Good at Editing. And editing is a cool concept. Also, an hilarious word, I think. There's something about the word edit, especially when you add an ing to the end of it, that sounds really funny to me. So if I'm chuckling, it's not chuckling about our problems or challenges, just about the silly word in front of us. All right. Thank you, Amy, for reviewing our description of today. That'll probably also be in any descriptive materials surrounding the way you are accessing this webinar today. I am Kyle DeJute. I usually include in my introduction information here that I love to push up my nerd glasses about Braille codes. I also love to push up my nerd glasses about Braille transcription software because it is one of the great ways that we get more Braille, more places, more often. Yeah. So I'm going to push up my Braille nerd glasses with you. I should tell you also that my official title at APH is Braille Trainer. We are going to start today with some concepts and a few reminders before we launch or before we take off like an airplane into concrete instructions for Duxbury and specific content. So starting with concepts and reminders, our first thing to check in our pre-flight checklist is, again, the Duxbury website. We've seen this before. It is duxburysystems.com. Available from that website is, of course, the software that we're talking about, available for download. And if you haven't purchased a license when you download the program, you can still use a demo or a demonstration version. Now, that version enforces itself as a demonstration version by sprinkling the letters D, E, M, O throughout your file as you're working. And if you're just playing around with tools, especially these kinds of editing, larger picture tools that we're talking about today, the demo version can be a great window into what the program is doing. Now, if you're trying to play with translation tools, like how one word goes into UEB depending upon what codes or styles or other material are around it, well, the demonstration version may be less helpful to you because those letters D, E, M, and O are sometimes going to pop up within the word whose translation you're looking at. But you can't just download the software from Duxbury's website. There are lots of other things you can do there, including explore frequently asked questions, which, yes, those are often about installation of the program. There is the help or the documentation files from the Duxbury that are also your help menu in Duxbury, right? And when you access those online, you can look at the documentation from anywhere, anytime, and you can look at the documentation very easily while also using Duxbury simultaneously, something that isn't always true when you are exploring the documentation from within the Duxbury program window's help menu. Last but not least, the Duxbury website allows you to find information on listservs. I know I've mentioned those in some of the previous webinars. There is a Dux Announce listserv, which you can sign up for. And I think we'll go to the website here in a moment and find exactly where that is. There is also a separate, more frequently posted to listserv, which is Dux User, where peer-to-peer and also from Duxbury to Duxbury users, there's discussion and conversation about how to do things. Answers to questions come up in the Dux User listserv. So if we were going to go to the Duxbury website and go to sign up for one of those listservs, we would try to get our Zoom controls out of the way so that you could actually see the browser that I'm using. And we would go to duxburysystems.com. And I want to say frequently asked questions is one. No, Dux News. There's a Dux News email news bulletin, and that's just a link from the very home page. Yeah. So when we click on that, it takes us to a page with information about not only the Dux News, receive news about Duxbury systems and our products by signing up for Dux News. It also gives information about the Dux User Discussion Group, which is a forum in a listserv open to Duxbury users or others potentially interested in becoming Duxbury users. So we want you to know there's lots to have on the Duxbury website. Now, continuing our starting with concepts, here is a list of vocabulary, which we can give quick definitions of here. And if at any point you have a question, you can post that live, or you can reach out to get further explanation about it. I hope we will define these terms now, and then I will resist the urge to redefine them repeatedly throughout our presentation so that we can fly through the coming concepts and tools. Our vocabulary starts with DBT, Duxbury Braille Translator. That is the Braille transcription software program we are talking about today. Word, can you hear the capital W in that? I'm talking here about Microsoft Word, the text editing or word processing program specific to Microsoft. Are there other word processing programs? Yes. Could you use those in your workflow with the Duxbury? Yes. Our next term to define is macro. Now, macro can be a prefix, meaning sort of very big. And that maybe makes sense for our definition here, which is essentially a recorded series of steps within your computer that then can be activated by a single push of a button. It's a shortcut. What else? The Nemeth code. This also has capital letters. Can you hear them? The Nemeth code. This is an active Braille code in the United States whose focus is the presentation of the language of mathematics in Braille. I like to go overboard in defining that term. I'm going to stop there and move on to our next term, which is UEB Math/Science. And next to that, there is a note, and, quote, UEB with Nemeth. Hold on to the UEB with Nemeth part. Our UEB Math/Science is just an extension of the Unified English Braille Code. Yeah, we can use the rules of UEB, and UEB also includes symbols to transcribe mathematics in Braille. Now, within the United States, we also can use UEB for text and page numbers and so on, with Nemeth for mathematics, science, any kind of technical notation. So our term UEB Math/Science means essentially the same thing as UEB Technical, and is UEB Math/Science is the current recommended terminology so that it can be distinguished from a transcription that uses UEB with Nemeth. Okay, maybe I've talked that to death. It is time to let it go. We have two more terms to define. They are related. NIMAS, that's all capitals, NIMAS, because this is an acronym for essentially an accessible XML file that has loads of information about a given book. And having all that information, lots of styles and tags, which give the information about text, makes a NIMAS file a powerful tool in making an efficient workflow for Braille transcription. And our last term is NIMPRO, NIMPRO. That's the Duxbury proprietary program, which serves as a sort of bridge between a NIMAS file, which is a big ol' honkin' file full of information, and Duxbury. NIMPRO bridges between NIMAS and Duxbury Braille Translator and takes out some of the information that we don't need for Braille transcription or that Duxbury doesn't need in order to make the workflow that includes NIMAS more smooth and efficient. Okay, we visited the website, we defined some terms. Now, let's establish some of our intentions. What exactly are we getting good at editing? I'm going to say it fast because I think it sounds really funny. Getting good at editing. I'm very good at editing. That's a nice phrase to say, that you are good at editing. But it is uncommon that one person is good at editing everything. What we're talking about today is related to the stages of the transcription process. So when we transcribe something, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens in relation to other people and existing processes. And we could start our Braille transcription at various stages along that process of document creation. Perhaps in a sort of dream situation, we are working with a file that is being designed with accessibility in mind. And when that is the case, pieces of text or text elements are often coded or styled or tagged as recognizable pieces of a document. For example, page number, heading, paragraph, etc. If we are part of the design of a file, and this may be true because you are both the author and the Braille transcriber, then our preparation for Braille transcription is quite clear. There is another possibility where someone else, or maybe even just past you before you were thinking about transcribing this, or far past you before you really knew about Braille transcription. Someone else has created the file, and then we've made it digital as accessibly as we can. And like I said, transcription happens in context. Yeah. So as accessibly as I can depends on the person, depends on the tools available to that person, and whether the file has been processed through OCR or optical character recognition, or perhaps the file has been written in a word processing program, but not with these styles that identify text elements. We eventually get the digital text. Yeah. Also, full disclosure, right? Many of us have typed in a document. Maybe it's because it's, this is a very specific example. It's the written in cursive little piece of paper where my grandmother wrote down these slightly absurd, flowery, extra names for all of her children, her siblings, and grandchildren. And that is material that it's maybe 15 names, each of which is 7 or 6 words, written again in handwriting that's cursive. So my preferred process for putting that material into a digitally accessible format would probably be to get a QWERTY keyboard user and have them type it in, or get someone who's looking at the paper to read it out loud and have text to speech give me some text to start working with. That's one very specific niche example of I've uploaded the file as accessibly as I can. There are other potential stages at the process where you might be coming in to start working with Duxbury and a Braille transcription. I want to mention one more specifically, and that is an inherited Braille file. That is, someone else made a Braille file and now you have access to it, and that's your starting point for transcription. And when that's the case, some of the tools we're going to look at here for editing will inform your decision about what to do with that inherited Braille file. Do you take it just as it is and keep it as your foundational document? Do you use it just as a reference for how things should be and start again from a sort of born accessible, really digital file, or maybe something in between? So what files could DBT import? We just talked about inherited Braille files, and most Braille transcription programs can import a file from a different Braille transcription program. So Duxbury, in many cases, can open an ABT file from Braille 2000, or maybe a Braille Blaster file. Duxbury definitely can open a BRF file, yeah? And that is a whole can of worms about possibly using some of Duxbury's skill in recognizing Braille layouts to apply styles even to the content of a BRF. That isn't a rabbit hole that we're going to go down today, but that functionality does exist. In addition to inherited Braille files, DBT can import Word files or other word processing program files like OpenOffice, math type files. And for more information about what file types DBT, Duxbury Braille Translator, see, I did it. I redefined a term we already talked about. For more information about what DBT can import, we can visit DBT's file import page on, you guessed it, Duxbury's website. I briefly defined NIMUS files previously. Here in the slide deck are links to pages about NIMUS. and also about Duxbury's NIMPRO program, which relates to NIMUS files. Yeah? For our purposes today, in the interest of moving ahead, I'm going to just read this and then move on. NIMUS, which stands for the National Instructional Materials Accessibility Standard, big breath, is a technical standard used by publishers to prepare electronic files that are used to convert instructional materials into accessible formats. The electronic files are known as NIMUS source files. The purpose of NIMUS is to help increase the availability and timely delivery of instructional materials in accessible formats for qualifying students in elementary and secondary schools. NIMPRO processes NIMUS files and some other file types into a file type that is editable in DBT. Whatever we bring into Duxbury is going to have instructions, codes. At the very least, it's going to say when a page break happens. Probably going to say when a line break happens. We spoke in an earlier webinar about how every Braille file that gets opened in Duxbury becomes a DXB because it is now an active, editable file in Duxbury. So if you use Duxbury to open a BRF, it will become a DXB and include instructions or codes for line breaks, page breaks, spaces. If you import a word processing file to Duxbury, it will come with instructions, including codes and styles that are made up of codes. So again, if you have a sort of born accessible, nicely, consistently, we transcribers love consistency. If you upload a file that has been consistently prepared in a word processing program, maybe it is an accessible DOCX, it will have instructions or codes in Duxbury. For more information about building accessible Word documents, and that information also applies to other word processing programs, there is an APH Hive course called Building Accessible Word Documents. What if I import a run-of-the-mill DOCX, like a word processing program that was prepared by someone who wasn't thinking about accessibility or who didn't have the tools to prepare a really deeply accessible file? Will that run-of-the-mill DOCX have instructions when I import it into Duxbury? Girl, yes. What about a file from a LaTeX editor, this sort of math and science layout programming tool? Yes, a file from a LaTeX editor will also have some instructions and codes in Duxbury. And we expect some of the math codes I hope we'll touch on today, and definitely that we will touch on in our fourth of this 4-part Duxbury series. If I create a file with 6-key entry, will it have instructions and codes? Yeah, just like a BRF we talked about earlier, right? Even a document created with 6-key entry will have line break, space, page break codes, and could, depending upon your workflow, have more codes and even styles. Are there any particular file types that I didn't address that are really common? If you come up with one now or later, you can, again, visit that DBT website page on file imports. Accessible word processor files. Aha, someone asks a good pointed question about file types. PDFs. Can Duxbury import a PDF? There are constant advancements made. However, to the best of my knowledge, Duxbury cannot import a PDF. You'll have to use a broader market program to convert your PDF. There are many such programs. There are free online PDF converters. There is Phone a Friend, who has the full Adobe suite, who can convert a PDF to a Word document, probably for preference. Or there are many other sort of OCR or PDF conversion programs, but you will have to use one of those in order to get a file that you can then send to Duxbury or open through Duxbury. Thank you for asking. A word on accessible word processor files. They're excellent. That's really the only word that I have for them. Now, did I remember to tell you something I was supposed to? And do you remember? It's time for a quiz. True or false? When working with a Microsoft Word file or any file from a word processor, you must use the Braille tab and/or a BANA template to complete a Braille transcription using DBT. True or false? That is, do you have to use the BANA Braille tab? Oh, I see results. False. Oh, yes. 69% of you got it completely right. This question is maybe a little confusing, and I apologize for that. However, the takeaway is not gray. It is absolutely false. It is not required that you use the Braille tab or the BANA template to complete a Braille transcription using Duxbury Braille Translator. You could just use Duxbury. You could use a different word processing program. You could make a beautifully accessible Word file. Sorry, you could build an accessible Word file and then use Duxbury to open it. And in all of those cases, even within Duxbury, as we have discussed in previous webinars, the English UEB BANA template is almost always the most useful template in the US and Canada, and you don't have to use it either. So in short, what are we getting good at editing? Well, like a bagel covered in garlic powder, sesame seeds, and poppy seeds, we're getting good at editing everything with the end goal of a beautifully edited Duxbury file. There are many paths, right? Okay, what could make up that beautifully edited DBT file? Now, I'm going to try and say not very many words about these slides because they are a preparation for some processes I want us to have time to look at. So we are going to jet through this section of slides about what could be the components of a beautifully edited DBT file. Headings. There are many kinds. In this slide are some specific styles. See Foundations of Duxbury webinar about what makes up a style. Page numbers. Again, here are some styles as well as some of the codes that make them up and some codes that have other tools to access them, but the codes are really an efficient way to get your page numbers settled where you need them. And then there is a visual mnemonic for one of those page number codes specifically. And I love this code. It is SVPNP, and then 4 variables separated by colons. And each of those variables sets the placement for a certain kind of page number. That is in order Braille odd, Braille even, print odd, and print even. And when I say odd and even, I mean for file pages. Sometimes we refer to in an interpoint embossing, we refer to the front of that page as the odd page and the back as the even. And when we set our 4 types of page number, we can use one of 4 Arabic numerals. 1 means top left of the page. 2 means top right of the page. 3 means bottom left of the page. So we've sort of read across the page. And 4 means bottom right of the page. And 0 means don't show it, Duxbury. So 0 is the value that we often set for the second variable here, which is about even Braille page numbers in an interpoint transcription especially. Now, I fully appreciate this concept, which is explained on the previous slide and which is described on this slide and also given a visual description. I appreciate that getting to know that so you can use it will take some time. The reason I tell you about it is that I find it has saved me a lot of time in setting these things repeatedly within a document's workflow in the menus. So when I use the menus, I find I have to set these values repeatedly because I do a lot of work in Word and then take that to Duxbury to preview it. And when I don't use a code like this SVPNP with its 4 variables after that, when I don't use a code to set my page numbers, I have to use the page number menu in Duxbury every time I bring in a Word file to set where all of these page numbers go. And I don't love that. What else makes up a beautifully edited DBT file? Blank lines. And we can code for having those or for not having them or for keeping them with something or for having them conditionally, like if this follows, then don't, but if this follows, then do. Blank lines are beautiful, though we know not everybody loves them. Another component is things kept together. So for example, a centered heading kept with some of the text that follows after it, so we don't have an absurd situation where our centered heading is line 25 of a Braille page. Other things kept together might be a string of math expression. We need that kept together on a Braille line, if at all possible. One more example, and then I swear I'll move on. In a test, a question stem and its answer choices should be kept all together on a Braille page. We need them packed together somehow or protected. Of course, our content of paragraphs and lists and etc. is another component of a beautifully edited DBT file. Also footers, graphics, tables. Can you think of more? Oh, sorry. I made my browser pop up. Okay. So now let's look at Duxbury in action with some of these things. I have, I hope, a somewhat meta example of a PowerPoint slide deck that I was recently transcribing. And Braille Formats gives us some guidelines for transcribing a PowerPoint series or a series of any slides. It could be Google Slides or anything else, of course. And what Braille Formats tells us in short is each slide is treated as a print page number, and then we choose a pattern of headings that's consistent, that can be consistent for that series of slides. In this case, each of my section headers is a cell 1, is a centered heading. And then each of my headings for a slide within that is a cell 5 heading. Let's look at the actual codes that are happening in this Duxbury. So I'm using the style ref page number. I transcribed this document using the English UEB BANA template, and that template includes the style ref page number. So here I have highlighted the number 8 between in angle brackets ref page number period, and then immediately after that Arabic numeral is in angle brackets slash ref page number period. The slash tells us this is the instruction to end the style. So when I translate, I get a, doggy in the window, right? Separate Braille file. And my 8 is styled as a print page number according to BANA formatting guidelines. Now, I'm going to get to how there are other ways to style a print page number, especially because I know we have some people working outside of the Braille formats and BANA jurisdiction. But before I talk about another way, I want to note also some of the effect of that way I have already done. When my content of print page 8, in this case, because this is a transcription of a PowerPoint slide deck, my slide 8 extends over a Braille page break, indicated by a big, bold black line that goes all the way across the Duxbury display. My next Braille page has the lettered continuation print page number, and that is automatically generated. I don't have to do anything to make that lettered continuation print page number appear. So that's what's happening in the Braille as a result of my using the ref page number style. I already said, what if I'm using a template where I don't have that style? Is there another way I could get a print page number? And I believe putting the code LEA before the number 8 is going to give us the same functionality. Now, I have to admit to you here, I want to admit to you here that the letters used for Duxbury codes and the names of Duxbury styles, I sometimes struggle to remember. I find them not very intuitive. So specifically what I'm confessing to you here is I do not know why LEA is the code for print page number. Maybe we could find the answer if we looked in the Duxbury codes quick reference and read Duxbury's description of that code and what it does. Sometimes there is history of naming embedded in that information. But to style something or to designate something as the print page number, we can use the BANA style ref page number, or we could use the code LEA before the print page number. I did say I wasn't going to go down the rabbit hole of print page numbers. I want to acknowledge there are many more questions to which there are answers about print page numbers. Some of those questions are, what if I have something other than an Arabic number that is my print page number? What if my print page number should go away at a certain point, like to make room for a tactile graphic, or to leave a page completely blank for a tactile graphic? What if I have combined print page numbers and I want my lettered continuation pages to be built on only the last of those combined page numbers? Again, there are answers to all of those things, and some of them are even embedded in the slide we glimpsed earlier about codes and styles for page numbers. Let's look at another component. We talked about headings and how there are headings within my beautifully coded DBT file. Let's see, one of the headings that I have going on, well, I don't want to confess to you that I was using an old version of Duxbury, and so I used a numbered style for some of my headings. That's a conversation for another day. I do have a note from a participant about print page numbers. So here for slides 14 through 15, and I'm just going to give us a quick glimpse into this print PowerPoint so we can really see why 14 to 15 is combined. In short, print page 14 has the section heading using UEB with Nemeth on it, and that's it. Then slide 15 has its own heading and a paragraph of text as well as a picture. So returning to the note we just got from a participant, you can press Alt, Enter, and it inserts the code LEA, which, as we discussed, says what comes after this is the print page number. Now you might note I have another code in this sequence. So I have LEA 14-15 and then the code LEC and the number 15. So let's talk about what Braille happens as a result when I translate. And again, I used Control-T to translate and get this Braille file. I get a print page that is 14-15, then my centered heading. I start with a cell 5 heading for the heading of the next slide, and I have a paragraph. That paragraph continues on another Braille page, and my lettered continuation print page number is A15. So what do you think that LEC code that we looked at did? Yeah, it told Duxbury, okay, fine, that 14-15, that comes after the LEA. And when you make a lettered continuation print page number, build it on this. And then we put the 15 after the LEC code. Then I have a heading. Oh, and look, I used the H1-heading centered style, and baked into that is protection and blank lines. So my centered heading has a blank line before and after it. And if it were, I think this will behave right, if things were to move in such a way that that heading would not be able to stay with the next heading and some text, every part of that moves down. Now, I say that, but I think this particular heading, because it had another heading after it and then also some text, I think I specifically coded to protect it, and I did so with protect codes. And I'm calling them that because that's what Duxbury calls them, and that's also the name of the menu sort of option within the Braille tab in Word, where you can find essentially macros for inserting these protection codes. So I told Duxbury, hey, start keeping things together before the print page number. And I told Duxbury that by putting in the code KPS. And you can read in the Duxbury Codes quick reference what KPS is and how it's different from KBS, or a pair of colon and semicolon. So I used KPS. And then when I got to a point where I was finished with protecting, I put in KPE. And in this instance, I used KPE1 because I put that end page protect code at the end of the cell 5 heading. But I also needed another line of text to be included. So what my instructions here say is, hey, Duxbury, keep together this print page number, which I've given you instructions for lettered continuation print page numbers, and this centered heading, and this 5.5, this cell 5 heading. And then once you get all of those, also hold on to one more Braille line. And if you can't, boop down to the next Braille page. So there we looked at some components of a coded Duxbury file, including page numbers, at least print page numbers, headings, and things kept together, and incidentally, blank lines as well. I feel uncomfortable about leaving this coded exactly the way that it is. So for cleanliness sake, I'm just going to put my cursor in what I currently have styled as 5.5 and change its style. That is, I'm going to apply a different style to it because I really will feel more comfortable looking at it if we're actually using a cell 5 heading style. Now my Braille comes out exactly the same, and my styles and codes have a little more intentionality that's obvious, I think. Now, I made myself a little note here that I should include talking about modify style. I also remember that I told you all I would give you a peek at those couple of slides from the PowerPoint. So let me follow through on what I have said I would do. Here's my working PowerPoint file for the CTEBVI, that is the California Transcribers organization. PowerPoint, here's slide 14, and it's simply a section. What are you? You're a transition slide, title and subtitle. Well, it only has a title, and that's it. And Braille format says when you have a page that has only a title, combine it with the next page. And they do that because we don't want our Braille to be nothing but print page change indicators. Yeah. So then slide 15 has the heading Meet the Bubbles, and the paragraph in a UEB with Nemeth transcription. The math and technical notation is presented in Nemeth code. Between code switch indicators, I call those bubbles, and there is a picture of some iridescent bubbles. Spoiler, I took the alt text from that picture in order to write my transcribers note identifying this picture in the Braille transcription of the slides. I did not come up with a definition while I was transcribing. I took the descriptive alt text to make my description in the Braille. Okay, so let's look at that photo. It is in my Braille file. The words "photo of soap bubbles, iridescent" is in the style transcriber note. Now, could we use codes instead of the style transcriber note? Well, yes, I wouldn't. And if I wanted to, here's how I would find which codes I might use. I think I would use modify style. And that is a tool which you access in the document dropdown. And when you click on it, you get a little pop-up menu called Document, Modify Style, and then the list of styles available in the template that you were just in. In this case, I want to go, we were just talking about the transcriber note style. So I have typed T and then down arrowed to that style. And once I've done that, my display populates the beginning codes with whatever makes up the opening part of the transcriber note style, and ending codes with whatever makes up the closing part. That part that starts with a slash that is within angle brackets, yeah? So the transcriber note style is made up of, it starts with 2 codes, and the second code is TNS, that is transcriber note start, and that simply inputs the 3-cell symbol for a transcriber's note. That is the 3-cell symbol opening transcriber's note. Specifically dots here, let's go look at it because I'm having a dumb moment. The TNS would put in dots 4, dots 46, dots 126. Oh, okay. And then when we go back into modify style, it's under the document dropdown, and we choose the style that we want to interrogate. I'm going to see what codes make it up. We can see in the ending part of the transcriber note style, there is a code TNE. $20 says that puts in the closing transcriber's note indicator. If you took that bet from this side, then you would win. Yeah, the TNE puts in the ending transcriber's note indicators. And that's a code that is likely to work in any template, any English template. Any English UEB template. You guys, there are a wide variety of templates. Now, I have been ignoring the other 2 styles, the other 2 codes that make up the transcriber note style, and I will just talk about them quickly. In the beginning codes section of the modify style display here, we see HI, big breath, 7:5:0:0:0:0:1:7:5. Now, I will leave it to your reading skill to fully interrogate the Duxbury Code's quick reference about the many variables that can be included in an HI code. In short, the HI code sets cells for beginning lines and runover lines in lots of different circumstances. So you might recognize the numbers 7 and 5, and that's because the transcriber's note style has our text starting in cell 7 with runovers in cell 5. And last but not least, our transcriber note style ends with the code HI. That is at the beginning of the ending codes section. And I think that just turns off the settings we had established earlier with the HI7:5, etc. Now, modify styles, you might note I can't get in to the beginning codes and ending codes blocks here. I can't change the codes that make up this style. I can learn about them. I can hear what they are, but I can't redefine the transcriber note style, which is a permanent piece of the English UEB BANA template. However, I could rename it, which is dangerous because then you have a Duxbury that works in a different way than other people's Duxburys, and it becomes a little more difficult to troubleshoot. I could, and this is much better, add a style. That's a different option in the document drop-down menu. Instead of choosing modify style, which is a really good research tool, I would choose add style. And having done some research, I might, again, in my add style box, I might go to transcriber note style. And now I can start adjusting after I hit the OK button. Oh, I see. I have to name it first. So I don't really want to mess with it because I don't have a plan. Like any recording or adjustment that I want to make, I want to have a plan before I get all the way in. We'll just call it Kyle Demo. I want it not to be nested within another style. I want it to be a standalone paragraph style. So I've unchecked the box. And when I hit OK, oh, I can't have a space in my name. My name for the style. I had to add Kyle space demo, and I had to get rid of that space. Then I get the edit style codes box that comes up. And this is where I would really have to have a plan ready. Yeah, whatever difference I wanted to make based on the transcriber note style, I could start putting in different codes here to change or add to the behavior of the style that I'm adding, and I can add that style based on an existing style. Now, that's a lot of information. I fully appreciate that. You do not have to look at modify style, and you do not ever have to add a style. And if you needed to, now you know where to look for it to be possible. It is time for a quiz. To examine what codes make up a paragraph style, we should use which of the following? Find, modify style, apply style, or sixlets?
Well, we have participants putting in their thoughts, but it's a little slow.
We just covered a lot, and there are a lot of options here.
Yeah.
I'll read it just one more time. To examine what codes make up a paragraph style, we should use which of the following? Find, modify style, apply style, sixlets. Spoiler, sixlets is not the answer. It's a kind of candy that often comes in a package of 6 candy chocolate spheres.
That one tickled me.
I
I'll
love
go
sixlets so
ahead
much.
and share out. No one picked option D.
Good job, everyone. Way to not focus on candy. We're focusing on content, not candy. Modify style. That is the research tool, yes, I would recommend for examining what codes make up a paragraph style. Now, that being said, as we just experienced, the apply style tool could also let you see what codes, or no, not apply, sorry, add style. Thank goodness that wasn't an option. Apply style is what we use to style up our document, but the correct answer here was modify style. What about Word's Braille tab? There's only one slide in this section, you guys, and it says Braille tab is macros. Someone else, Susan Christensen specifically, has made a bunch of shortcuts in Word for you. And so when we use that Braille tab in Word, we are clicking a single button, which activates a series of commands. For example, insert a Duxbury code, and that code is protect start, or KPS. And that collection of macros, a bunch of buttons, each of which activates a set of commands, has been prepared by Duxbury and an individual working for Duxbury. Her name is Susan. Now, could I follow in Susan Christensen's clever footsteps? In a way, yes. That is making macros. Can I? Yeah, you could. A macro is a single instruction that expands automatically into a set of instructions to perform a particular task. A macro is a shortcut. In Word, oh, you guys, I love this slide because it reminds me of a silly thing in Microsoft Word. The icon that sits next to your cursor when you tell Word to record a macro is a cassette tape. It's a magnetic audio tape. Kind of like the save button, the save icon in Word is a floppy disk. It's the shape of a like 3.5 floppy disk from historical computer eras. Well, in Word, there is a record macro command, and it is somewhere on your Microsoft Word ribbon. Depending upon your setup, oh, yeah, did I stop sharing?
No, no, no. I'm sorry. I'm sorry,
Oh, okay.
Kyle. I did not want to distract you. I just thought I would see if, I'm sorry to interrupt everyone. Since it's already out there, just want to ask, are you seeing the PowerPoint slide that Kyle is sharing out of curiosity? Great. Thank you. My apologies, Kyle. There was a thing switched on my end.
Understandable.
Thank you
Thank
for
you for checking.
being kind. Thanks.
Uh, so this is a really, really silly thing to see. So it's worth highlighting here. On my Word setup, and yours may be different, but I swear to you, the option to record macro is somewhere on there. On mine, it's on the View tab under the in the macros group. And when I go to record macro, I would do some more intelligent steps about naming it and describing and deciding whether I want my macro to be activated by a keyboard shortcut or by a button that floats on the Word, that can float on the Word toolbar. I'm not going to make those intelligent decisions right now because I really just want to show you my cursor displays as a pointer, and also there's a rectangle below it, and that rectangle is a stylized magnetic audio tape. It kind of looks like a robot face, the way that it is stylized here. But I'm here to tell you it is actually a cassette tape. Okay. What about in Duxbury? Is there a record macro there where I can click some options, maybe type some things into my document, and then record those steps and replay them upon command? Not exactly. We aren't going to go too in depth in this today, but it is true that in the global drop-down menu of Duxbury, you can choose shortcut preferences, and a pop-up box comes to you with 5 openings, which have editable, that is, things that cannot be changed, which label each of those 5 openings that are associated with a keyboard press. So the first is insert for grade 0 is what it's called. But in parentheses, it says Alt 0. And then there's room for you to enter a code or codes. So essentially, whatever you put in that little box under blah, 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 Alt 0, that's what's going to go into your document when you press Alt 0 on your keyboard in Duxbury files after you've changed your shortcut preferences. Not going to talk it to death. I think you might be able to intuit where some of the danger is here, because one of these shortcut preferences is when you press enter, what happens? I wouldn't change that one. I wouldn't change what code goes in when you push the key enter, because that is enter being a new line is a really universal behavior. And so pressing enter in Duxbury is default set to put in the code, looks like an opening angle bracket, and that is a hard line break. I think that one we should leave alone. Can a macro be edited? Says an owl, tilting its head way over at you. Sure. If I'm honest, that is currently outside of my expertise, but I feel confident it is not outside of your capabilities. There are a couple of different ways to edit a couple of different kinds of macros. I know that even within the word menu for macros, there's something like that might be called step into a macro, where you can see some of the coding that it's made of. And I bet it's not outside your capabilities to edit that. What do I do when a macro needs to be changed? I create it again from scratch. I record it again from scratch. That's my second confession, at least, of the day. Okay, it's time for a quiz. What is a macro? A kind of pasta, a kind of shortcut, an overview of styles used. You can think for a minute. What is a macro?
It would help if I unmuted myself. All right, so we have a lot of participation on this one, so I'm going to go ahead and end it so that you can see results, Kyle.
Yeah, you guys are so right. It's a kind of shortcut. A macro is a kind of shortcut. Now, math coding. We're going to talk a lot about this in our upcoming webinar on May 20th. So I just want to repeat, any document that comes into Duxbury is going to have instructions. Sometimes we can generate instructions that we don't otherwise know about by typing in Braille in 6-key and then translating and looking at the print document to see how Duxbury told itself what you just typed. You always have to test the results of such an experiment. But sometimes you'll get a code that corresponds to a series of cells you've just typed, and that can be really rewarding. And then maybe you could incorporate that code into a macro or other workflow improvement for yourself. Again, we are going to talk in detail about a number of math codes in our next webinar. This is just a sort of teaser. Fraction codes include FS, FL, FE, or fraction start, fraction line, and fraction end. Guess where the denominator goes? Between the fraction line and the fraction end. Guess where the numerator goes? You got it. After FS and before FL. And that works like so many math codes, whether for Nemeth or UEB, and it works according to those codes rules. If you want Nemeth, and again, we're not going to talk in detail, but make sure you put the Nemeth material in a math style. Geometry codes include some for modifiers. And one of my favorite, like if you're not here for our next session, I want to make sure you know many Unicode characters, which are what's used for all of the print characters that are included in the rules of UEB and most of the print characters in the Nemeth Code 2022. Those Unicode print characters, a lot of them you can copy from your rules document and paste into Duxbury and get the Braille dots that you need. Does it go the other way? Sometimes you can type in the Braille dots that you know and translate and get the print character from the resulting Duxbury print file. Yeah, that can happen. Again, math codes are instructions to Duxbury, which can work for UEB and Nemeth. We use the same codes to say, here's where a fraction starts, here's where it ends, and here's the line that distinguishes the numerator and from the denominator. Now, this slide has a picture of juice concentrate and a picture of some soup because a couple of years ago we did webinars focused on UEB math science and focused on Nemeth code, the silly titles of which are UEB math science juice concentrate and the Nemeth code bouillon cubes. Oh, no, I clicked on a link instead of clicking to advance a slide. No, thank you, computer. I just want to move on with my life. Now, a Nemeth transcription, when we're using that English UEB BANA with Nemeth, anything we want to appear in Nemeth code is going to need to be enclosed in the style math. Always check your transcription results. Always check your translation results, especially for math. Of course, BANA has a page on the Nemeth code. And when we're checking our transcription results, we should be consulting our Braille codes to make sure that what we're seeing on the screen, even if it looks beautiful or jives with what we remember, is in fact correct. Oh, did I tell you what I was supposed to? And did you remember it? Here's, I think, our last quiz for today. Which option best completes the following phrase? Codes applied within one Duxbury template. First option will only work within that template. Second, will mostly disappear in another template. Or third, will mostly work in other templates.
Oh, we have a bit of a tie going on.
Oh, I love a competition.
Yeah. Wait just a moment. It's got 37% reporting. Would love just a few more responses. But it's totally going back and forth. Okay. Curiosity killed the cat. Oh, am I allowed to say that? I don't know. Okay. Here are the results.
will mostly work in other templates has taken the lead with 15 respondents. 11 said will only work within that template. And you're catching on to something important. It is true that codes applied within one Duxbury template will mostly work in other templates, like the fraction codes that we talked about, or the LEA print page code that we saw work. And there are some codes, especially styles, which is why we tried to really focus on codes here. Styles that will only work within one template. Yeah, we've been discussing as a group repeatedly, what's the difference between English UEB BANA and English UEB Basic? Most of our codes really will work. Duxbury is good about making codes that have application in many environments. And our Braille environments can be very different. So sometimes a code just doesn't have anything that's related to it in a different, like a Duxbury instruction code doesn't have anything that's related to it in a different Braille code. So, of course, there's more math codes to talk about, and we will, and we can, but not today. Also not going to demonstrate any math codes because you put them in just like any other code once you're in Duxbury. Here in the slides, which are your handout, there are some resources related to math in Braille. I said earlier, we should always check our primary source, right? Our best source is our Braille code books. And for further explanation, like really excellent explanation, I might consult for Nemeth code, NFB's Mathematics Braille Transcription course. ICEB has a page on UEB, including guidelines for technical material, which covers some math and science. APH's UEB math tutorial gives some practice and alternate explanation. Not alternate rules, just additional or alternate explanation of how the rules work. There's an APH Nemeth tutorial as well. And then many nerdy Braille-focused organizations, including National Braille Association, the Florida Instructional Materials Center, which has a little collection of webinars and handouts, and CTE BVI, whose conference just ended. That's the California-based professional development organization. So today, we were supposed to explain how to show hide codes in DBT. Well, we did that in a previous webinar. I suppose as long as we're focusing on it, let's take a moment to say, remember those slides that we looked at and how we were looking at the print file and how it's full of boxes? And these little boxes, which are gray in my display, but sometimes appear a dark beige, they give us lots of information about where a style starts and where a style ends, where a code appears. But what if I didn't want to see those? I could press Alt F3, and then they go away. And Alt F3 is a toggle, yes? So if I press it again, the codes and styles come back. And that's true in the print document and also in a Braille document. What else were we supposed to do today? Define macro in terms of Microsoft Word and explain that a macro can be edited and explain how using codes makes it possible to efficiently prepare both UEB and UEB with Nemeth transcriptions for one document. We did touch on that. Again, I am Kyle, and my email, if you want it, is kdjute@aph.org. We beautifully mentioned that other parts of this series are available already on YouTube, and this one will also. And then on May 20th, we're going to talk a lot about macros and math. And I have a two-part last but not least. Most importantly, you are using Duxbury Braille Translator, not me. When you're doing it, it's your workflow and your needs, and Duxbury is not using you. You are the very important thing here. Separately, I have a little person who came home early today who wants to say goodbye to everybody now that we're actually finished, and she can ask me for things again. Come say goodbye. Thank you.
Kyle, thank you so much for all of this information that you have poured over us today. So many different skills and things that we have learned. Just appreciate the wealth of knowledge that just pours out from you.